Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle. My name is Iain Mackay. I'm here hosting with my good buddy Michael Grameslaw for us to preview the game against Ipswich on Saturday afternoon at Portman Road. And I think, actually, Michael, as it's just you and I, so we've only got two sets of opinions to get through instead of three, that what we ought to do before we look at Ipswich is to look back at that wonderful performance on Wednesday night at home to Brentford. I thought it was a wonderful performance. Fantastic seats right on the corner flag, so I could watch Tonali's goals fly in.
Beautiful.
Which I did, but very, very good. How did you? I mean, to be honest, we were as much in control in that game as we were against Leicester. I thought. But I mean, you had a different view from me in the pub with all the guys jumping around and getting rowdy. How did you see the match?
Well, first of all, I want to ask, you got it spot on in the prediction, by the way. Did you put the bet on?
No. Couldn't.
Yes.
Couldn't
Oh,
have.
you couldn't?
I mean, no. I mean, not just the score, but I think if you remember, I said that we would blitz them. We'd go 3 up after about an hour when he'd take all the big
And they
players
get a
off, and then we
consolation.
would coast to the end for them to get a last-minute consolation. I mean, I couldn't believe it. If I put a bet on for all of that, I'd be on holiday now. But no, it got to the point where I was going to put my bet on, and I couldn't get any Wi-Fi signal in the pub to be able to get onto it. So I thought, nah, it doesn't matter. I've recorded it all anyway. That's far more glory than actually winning whatever £17 or whatever me £2 at 15-2 would have made us. But yes, it was just as I suspected, and I was absolutely delighted to see how they went on. But what grabbed you?
I think the main thing for me was seeing Tonali and Bruno in that there was a lot more rotation between the 8 and the 6 against Brentford than what we saw against Leicester, where Tonali very much just sat back. We saw a lot more Bruno on the ball, and we saw that, hang on, that rotation actually can work just as well as one of them just playing the role throughout the entire game. And I thought Tonali and Bruno have controlled games again. I mean, it's been at home to Leicester and Brentford, so I'm not going to get too, overly confident in how they're going to perform in the future. I'm not going to get carried away. And it was against a Brentford midfield that was missing the likes of Christian Norgard, who, very, very good player. So it'll be very interesting to see how they do against Ipswich. But yeah, we'll get to that. But I think one of the main things for me as well is we are starting to see the best of Anthony Gordon again. It's a shame he didn't get his goal, but I thought he played absolutely fantastically. And that left-hand side with Lewis Hall and Anthony Gordon just looks to be going from strength to strength. And I know it's weird to say, being 12th in the league, and it's well below where we expect it to be, but it feels really positive being a Newcastle fan right now, which is really strange considering how negative we are. Well, I have been, let's say. But, what we've seen a lot over the last few months, it feels strange to say that, we're really positive at the moment. And, I'd fancy us against anyone. That EFL Cup Semi-Final draw, whoever it is, Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Man United, I'd fancy us against all of them. Bring them all on. I'd fancy us against any of them over two legs.
We'll play two of them. Come on. Arsenal and Liverpool turn up at once. We'll have yes. No, I agree with you about Anthony Gordon. He was so close to getting that goal in the second half. One thing which I don't know if it came across on the telly or if it happened for long enough for anybody to know. I saw after the game Sandro Tonali talking about the fact that the team themselves felt that they were always flat in the first 10 minutes of the second half. That was always they were always worried about getting back up to speed. And I think some of our matches have reflected that. That's when we have let things slip away from us on occasion.
100%.
That was happening last night when they came out. We'd just gone 2 up, had half time, sat back down again, waiting for the tornado to trundle forward and destroy Brentford. And actually, we started really quietly. And the man who got us back on track was Anthony Gordon, who chased back 40 or 50 yards to dispossess somebody on the edge of our own box when they had passed around and danced through 3 or 4 half-hearted challenges, and him coming all the way back and just taking the ball off somebody's foot. And the way the crowd roared at that seemed to galvanise them to get back into action. But the signs were there that this 100% pressing, aggressive game, which worked so well in the first half, they don't just automatically turn that on straight away. And as I said, start of the second half, I'll be watching very carefully at Ipswich to see. I mean, I think that's what happened against Brentford, because we were all over them in the first half, went in 2-2, and then did nothing in the second half. So that's an interesting thing to watch as the season unfolds. It's certainly something we're going to have to eradicate. It had a brief moment when it could have happened last night. But as I say, to back up what you said about Anthony Gordon going forward and looking as dangerous as he has done, I think his work ethic and his teamwork dragged some of the players back into reality and told them that the game wasn't actually over at the start of the second half.
Yeah.
That made a big difference. Then, of course, they did step it back up, and what a second half performance. Again, unfortunate to leave the scoring at 3. Not only did Anthony Gordon put one that whistled past the post, Harvey Barnes came on and replaced him after an hour. Worked really well with Willock, another substitute, to take a shot that came off the inside of the post with the keeper well beaten. And then right at the very end, Asula outmuscled his way through to be bearing down on the goalkeeper. And actually, it was a really, really good defensive block right at the very end. But we thought that was it. We thought that was his first goal. But he came on and was a willing runner again, and he looked strong enough for this game. He does. I'm keen to see a bit more of him, to be fair. The only thing that got wrong on the 100%. Prediction, by the way, was that Lewis Smiley just sat and got cold on the bench. He never came on.
I was disappointed by that.
Could have given him the last 10 minutes. Could have done, but maybe he knows he's up to speed and he's saving him to replace Joe Linton on Saturday from the start. Who knows?
Potentially. I mean, I feel like if Joe Linton, obviously what happened to him during the game, he got the elbow in the face and stood on, the still of, I think it's Nathan Collins's heel on Joe Linton's jaw is disgusting. You can see why he was very angry about it. And I think maybe if that didn't happen, he obviously had a knock as well. So hopefully it's not too serious. But I think maybe if we weren't forced into the substitution to bring Joe Willock on at half-time, maybe we would have seen Lewis Miley. Maybe he just didn't think that Miley was fit enough for 45 minutes of, what was potentially going to be a Brentford onslaught. We saw how they were in the Premier League game. They stepped it up in that second half, and there was the fear that they were going to do it again. I actually thought from their side, I don't know if it was because they wanted to change things and they wanted to rest players for the weekend, which seems weird given their position. But I actually thought the starting tactics from Brentford were actually all wrong, particularly starting 4 centre-backs. And I think it was Christopher Iain who was playing pretty much a wing-back role. And he really struggled in the open stages, and we really made the most of that. We didn't play very many long balls to start off with. We were passing it along the floor brilliantly. There was moments, it was after they went to a back five and actually put a full-on proper wing back, but we were so confident, just fancy flicks around the ground. I think there was a moment in the second half where there's about 4 little back heels in a move, and it ends up brilliantly. But I just thought not starting Damsgaard, not starting Mbuemo, trying to rest Nathan Collins originally, which they tried to do, but Sepp van der Berg was injured. So, they were still trying to start 4 centre-backs. And then when one got injured, they replaced him with another centre-back. And it just didn't work at all on their part. Now, maybe they are just prioritising the league. But I thought it's one of those where Brentford and Newcastle had no reason not just to go all out for it. And I think we were gifted a bit of an easier game. But what I will say is that the performance was spot on. And I'm not sure that even with Mbuemo, Damsgaard etc. starting, that the result would have been any different because we were that good on the day. But because they made those changes and the tactical mistakes at the start, it doesn't look as good as what it actually was from Newcastle, because ultimately it was a complete performance up until the last couple of minutes where we did lose a little bit of concentration.
Well, I agree. My overriding impression of Mbeumo when he came on is he's quite portly, isn't he? He's quite a big lad.
Yeah.
As Joanne's dad said to me as we watched it, I can see his man boobs from here, is what he said. Um, I wouldn't go quite that far because him and Wissa linked up really well for their goal, actually. I
They
mean, we
do.
didn't get the
They're a
proper
really
tackle
good
in
pair.
midfield, but they did play that ball through very well and then set each other up. But it was the late consolation that I predicted. I was expecting it. So I'm not sure if it's done yet or not. When is the draw? Have we had it, or
No,
we'll wait
so
until
it'll
after the
be
game?
tonight. Yeah, so it'll be a couple hours from now as we're recording this. It's currently Tottenham and Man United are currently playing, just to give everyone a heads up. So we'll know by the time this podcast goes out who are playing in the next round, but bring them all on. We can beat any of them.
You don't care, do you? Not? I think I would prefer to play the winner of tonight's game because I think
Yes,
we can
I have my
definitely we could
preference.
definitely beat either of those by several goals at
Yeah.
St James's Park. But like you
So
say, I don't mind.
as it stands, Tottenham are beating Man United, and I would love Tottenham in the next round because I think they're probably the easiest opposition, which I don't think is a disgrace when the other two are Liverpool and Arsenal. But generally, I think the only team that would knock us out, and I say this just because I know what referees are like at Anfield, would be Liverpool. I think Arsenal over two legs, we saw against Palace, it took an offside goal for them to get through at home to Crystal Palace.
Mm.
They aren't going to prioritise this competition like we will. We'll play our strongest 11, and our strongest 11 beat their strongest 11 without Odegaard. If we're being completely honest, they were missing one key player, and we looked comfortable. So I'm very confident that no matter who it is, we'd be able to get through. But ideally, I would like to avoid Liverpool.
Well, I'm going to pause on that super positive note from Michael. Somebody have a word with the post office to produce some commemorative stamps to celebrate the fact that Michael has spoken for more than 10 minutes now and he hasn't been negative once.
I've been
I'll
positive for
pause.
like the last 20 episodes.
I'm going to pause and ask you to do us the Zencastr advert, please, Michael.
Not a problem. Do you have a story to hear that the Do you have a story to tell, should I say, that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. And yes, I have several stories I want to hear, but no matter how much I beg, I can't get anybody to tell me them. On to part
Maybe
two.
you should get people to
We'll
start a podcast.
I'll start the podcast and tell me the stories I want to hear. Um, On to part two, where we are going to look forward to the match on Saturday away at Portman Road, a traditional 3 o'clock kickoff, which is quite unusual. Saturday afternoon. Newcastle team, Michael. Do you envisage any changes other than the fact that Big Joe Linton is suspended and also has his ear hanging off as well, by the looks of things?
Yeah, he didn't look good. To be honest, I think even if he wasn't suspended, I don't think he'd be out there in East Anglia on Saturday. But I do actually envisage some changes. I think playing an unchanged 11 for 3 games in a row in the same week, although we do have another week before Aston Villa, pretty much, it is a difficult one. And, when we've had injuries in the past, I think Eddie Howe knows that maybe some changes are going to be needed. I think Jacob Murphy came off early. I think he was the first substitution for Harvey Barnes after like 60 minutes. So I think it's pretty much guaranteed that he keeps his place on the right wing. I do think Gordon and Isak will start. I think the changes might be the main change I think might be at right back, where we might see Kieran Trippier start just for Tino Livramento, who I'm not sure what it is, but I think the last few games he's probably been one of the only players who I think hasn't reached the same heights as the rest of the team. Now that's harsh because I think the whole team's played really well, but it does just seem like there's something a little bit different with Tino Livramento at the minute. Maybe he's picking up a knock, maybe he's just not 100%, or maybe it's a confidence thing. But I do think maybe we see Kieran Trippier in there for the Ipswich game, even if that's just another bit of experience at the back, while the likes of Gordon, Murphy, Isak fly forward.
Well, I mean, we were discussing whether Trippier would come in for Livramento at the Brentford game, and he didn't. Well, Livramento's just a young lad, and
Exactly.
I think he did. I think he did very well. He got turned a couple of times early on by the Brentford left winger,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it was him marauding down on the right and doing an overlap and putting a good cross in that's half cleared that gets Tonali his first goal. And then I do remember because he was defending the corner where I was sitting in the second half. He was pretty good in the second half, coming back and taking the ball off whoever's coming down their right. I'll just so that we won't agree on everything. I'm going to think that Livramento will start again, but I do think that Eddie's tactics of blitzing and getting so far ahead, he can take off whoever he likes whenever he likes in the second half, is one I love because it means all the best
Yeah,
players start. And I don't mind uh, Gordon and Tonali coming off, for example. If we're already 3 or 4 ahead, I can cope with it.
yeah,
I do think Lewis Miley's ready for some football, and I think maybe if we've got depends how Willock is. He looked really good when he came on, and we thought he might have been crocked after the Leicester game. So I think
yeah,
it'd be Willock that comes in to replace Joe Linton in midfield. Uh, if we can go 2 up, I wouldn't be surprised for Miley to come on for at least half an hour in that midfield. And Longstaff, keep the legs going.
yeah,
That's the Newcastle team. The Leicester team, full of people who I'm not really familiar with, but the people who I am familiar with, the Rory Delaps of this world, not Rory, it's his son. What's he? Rory Delap's son, who I've forgotten the first name of, who
Liam.
has looked really good, actually. He is a ready-made Premier League striker that they got from Manchester City. I think he's got 6 goals already, but he's suspended for
Yeah,
this game. My joy at that was compounded when you then advised me that their reserve striker is also injured. So
yeah,
who's
George
playing up front for
Hurst.
them?
So it seems like from the conversation I had with the Ipswich team the other day, it seems like Sammy Smodix will take a more advanced role and play central striker, but there is also the possibility that ex-Sunderland boy, Jack Clark, gets a start in a false nine sort of position that he played for Sunderland, or they will just do a little rotation of the team where Smodix will play up front. Clark will probably go on the left or the right. Amari Hutchinson will go into that number 10 role or on the right side, and Connor Chaplin will be in behind. But from the sounds of things, that Amari Hutchinson is their real danger man for us. And from what I heard from the team at Ipswich, he's a real diamond in the rough. And to be honest, from what I've seen, he's got really good feet. He can definitely beat a man. He can also put in a good cross, but sort of it just doesn't seem to have happened for Ipswich at home this season. So how long may that continue?
Hmm. We do hope. I mean, traditionally, this is the game where Ipswich pick up their first win because they've got a
Yeah,
buoyant Newcastle side to turn up and not do anything and lose 1-0, just like Luton,
yeah.
probably on the same weekend last year. So this Hutchinson play down the right, did you say?
Yeah, so Hutchinson can play across the whole of the midfield, or attacking midfield, should I say. He traditionally is playing on the left for them at the moment, but
Right.
with Jack Clark's preference being on the left, they were saying they believe they'll switch him either to the number 10 and play Connor Chaplin further forward, or they'll move him to the right. But either way, it looks like Szmodics, Hutchinson are going to be the two to look out for. And then obviously the Jack Clark Sunderland connection is probably going to be the main headline.
Just whoever it is that's going down the right is coming up against our own diamond in the rough, Lewis Hall, who not only is a fabulous attacking force, but is pretty darn sound defending as well. His anticipation in intercepting the ball and moving it into quickly to turn defence into attack is something that has stood out for me, even more so
100%.
against Leicester and against Brentford. What a great player we have on our hands there. Look, I am
100%.
going to pause. I'm going to pause there because I want to give you the Global Sports Podcast Network advert. And when I come back, we can. I'm going to ask you if there's anybody who you're particularly worried about other than Amari Hutchinson, and then we'll do some predictions.
Spot on.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. How many clubs, Michael?
Hopefully just the one, but it's every single club. But just listen to Newcastle. We're the best.
Why, aye. Anyway, part 3. Welcome back. Have the Ipswich boys spooked you in telling you how wonderful some of these young lads they've got playing for them are, or is it just all newly promoted team bravado?
To be fair, they were fairly honest about their situation. They were saying, look, we've got some brilliant talent, but unfortunately, they're probably not Premier League level just yet. But they've got a lot of raw talent that, could win them any game on that day, but inconsistently, when it comes to consistency on the big occasion which they've had at Portman Road, they've just not been able to really put it forward. But they were saying that two players that have stood out this season have been the centre back, Cameron Burgess, who they were expecting absolutely nothing from, and he seems a bit like a Mike Williamson of he'll block absolutely anything, but just isn't really that great. But he puts his life on the line. And then the other one is actually a Geordie. He played for Wallsend Boys Club for a little while, and that is the left back Leif Davis, who I, to be fair, do know a lot about. I said on the podcast with the Ipswich team that if we didn't have Lewis Hall, who I genuinely think will be one of the best left backs in the world in the next 5 years, maybe even earlier, that Leif Davis would probably be number one transfer target. But unfortunately, there's no way he's going to get ahead of Lewis Hall. So they're the two that they've said have stood out from a defensive perspective. Obviously, they do have a bit of the attacking talent, the raw talent, but they did agree that realistically, we should probably be winning this game.
So, what is your prediction, Michael? Generally, first, will this be the last game to get shown on Match of the Day, or do you think it might end up being number 2 or number 3?
Ooh. I think Ipswich games don't tend to have a lot of goals. They tend to be sort of 2-1s, but or 1-0s. But at the end of the day, they are very tight games, and I don't think we'll blow them away. I said yesterday, I stole your prediction of a 3-1, which is weird because I've just said they don't tend to have goals. But I think it'll be a really tight game. I think we'll score first, they'll equalise, and then I think in the last 20 minutes, I think we'll blow them away because I think we've got a lot of talent on that bench and a lot of talent that need to fight for that place. And we're starting to see the very best of our players at the moment. So I am going to steal your prediction of a 3-1, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, I can tell you, Michael, if you ever get a prediction right when you say 3-1, which I did, it's never 3-1 again the next week. So I'm glad you've pinched that one. I've got an opportunity to go a different way then. I
Yeah.
agree with you that I don't remember Portman Road being a particularly productive hunting ground for us. Although it's quite some time since we played there in the league, I think.
Yeah, I think Championship was probably the last time, and I don't think we got a victory.
No, I remember us losing 1-0s and 2-1s. But I mean, that's ancient history. Uh, I
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying about it being a tight game. I am astounded, certainly after watching the first 10 games of the season. Newcastle have scored three, four, three, two away at Brentford. I mean, we're scoring goals for fun and we're creating
yeah,
more chances than the goals that we score. Well, I suppose that's natural. But what I mean is, we're creating a lot of chances. We should be scoring more goals. We could have scored 5 or 6 last night. We could have scored more than that against Leicester. So
yeah, 100%.
I I don't think it's a goalless draw, and I think
No,
we might be on. Here we go. I don't know enough about Ipswich to condemn them like this, really, but I think we are due. We are due to turn up and play a game a little bit like Tottenham did at Southampton last week, where they just ran absolutely riot for half an hour,
yeah.
and they did go in at half time 5-0 and then didn't score in the second half. So I don't know if it'll be as much as that, but I think we will win 4-0 and we'll score all of them in the
Oof.
first half. That's
Wow,
bold, isn't it? That is bold.
that's very bold.
I know. Well,
I
I
mean,
could
I
have
hope it
predicted.
happens.
I could have predicted 1-1 draw and be wrong. So I'm going to
Why play
predict.
it safe?
I'm going to predict us starting to really come together. And then, of course, this when we talked a week or so ago, this was the third of the 3 games we had to save our season effectively. And it seems odd to be talking about that now when we hammered Leicester without any trouble and then knocked Brentford out of the cup almost in third gear.
Yeah,
I think we'll just continue with that, and they will correct the mistakes that they made in the first part of the season. Because 3 points tomorrow puts us into maybe just eighth or ninth, but we'll close the gap even more on whoever's in fourth, fifth, and sixth. And I think the home win that we'll get against Aston Villa on Boxing Day will catapult us into the top six. And then I'll be really looking forward to taking points off Manchester United and Tottenham.
oh, 100%.
I might be getting
Could
I
you
might be getting
imagine?
a little bit I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself. I don't know, but that's how I
Potentially.
feel. I think it's great. And if that is good, all of that will happen, and the next game after that will be the first leg of the Carabao Cup, which rather amazingly is being played in the first week of January. I thought it was a month after that.
Yeah, I
But
don't know what
yeah,
it is. I don't know if it's now. I don't know if I feel like it's always been 2 legs, and maybe we just think the second leg. We think of the timings of the competition is around the second leg, but I definitely don't remember the first leg being that early in January.
no, if we play on the 8th, it's the 8th, so 7th or 8th, I think, is the Tuesday and the Wednesday. We would then play on the 12th in the FA Cup against Bromley.
Yeah.
2 cup matches in the space of about 4 days. Um, I can't remember that. Maybe it's just because we're not thinking straight. But yeah, but what a great little run that would be, and I'll be really looking forward to taking Liverpool on back at St James's Park on the 8th of January. If we can match my predictions of these away wins at Man United and Tottenham as well, ah,
Oof,
that'd be
imagine.
wonderful. So thank you very much indeed for that, Michael.
Not a
I think
problem.
we are both going for a comfortable win away at Ipswich. Uh, Here's hoping that when we come to do a review of that for Monday morning, we're not left with egg on our faces. So I've been Ian Mackay, your host. Thank you very much indeed, Michael Grameslaw. I don't lisp. Michael Grameslaw, my fellow Daily Newcastle black and white man.
It'll do.
You've been great for listening. Thank you very much indeed. Fingers crossed for Saturday afternoon. We will come back on Monday morning with a review of the game, and hopefully, we'll all still be looking up to how far away we are from those European places.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.